Hey folks, welcome to the Generational Gap. I am Robert, your resident Gen Xer, and right down there is John, our resident millennial. John, how are you doing tonight?
Fan fucking tastic this time.
Ooh.
Yes. Fan fucking tastic.
That is on a level. That is on a strong high level. I like to hear it. It's good to know. Good to know.
Absolutely.
The,
Yes, yes.
the weight of the
Yes.
world, the weight of the world is not pressing you down. Is that correct?
Not currently, no. But it threatens to at times. You know how that is.
It's threatening to right
Oh
now.
shit, Midget B showed up.
Midget be in the house. Good to see you,
Yeah.
my sir,
It's
my
just not, it's
sir.
not the same if I go through a whole show without being called a cunt. It wouldn't be the same.
Well, if
So
I
thank you for showing up, Midget. We
if
appreciate it. We do.
if I had known that, I would start doing that on a regular basis. I mean,
It wouldn't be the same coming from
it's
me. It
not the
wouldn't be
same.
sincere. It's not
It's not the same.
sincere. It's
Nothing
just not, yeah.
nothing is the same as being called a cunt by midget. That is true.
That's how you know you're doing well in the world.
Is
You
that
get called a cunt by Midget B.
that that's an interesting thought. I don't know that I want to base all my world values on that, on my life values and future decisions on that. But
You may. You may.
all right. So, John, how has your week been? It's been good. It's there's only one thing happening right now, and
Oh,
it's
the coronavirus.
that's really the well, yeah, that's really the only thing really happening right now. Cause
Yeah, we finally got like a CDC like official, like guidelines and stuff. It's basically this shit you should be doing anyway, washing your hands and not
mhm.
sneezing on people, So we finally got, some kind of guideline thing, but it's just common sense shit, you know. Yeah.
um, I don't. I do believe that I'm going to say this, and this will kind of ties in with what we're going to be talking about tonight. But I do think that the president's responses to this, he needs to curtail those. The things that he's saying, because he's I think he's doing himself a disservice by looking like he doesn't know what he's talking about or is not taking it seriously enough in the eyes of a public that is being told from multiple other sources that you do need to take this seriously. I think it's going to hurt him in the long run when it comes to the election. Much like I think the stock market is indicating that we want to have trust in you, but we don't trust what you're saying. And so it's still having an impact. That's what I
Well,
believe, but I'm
so
not.
I thought his like response to it on the Fox News town hall that they did. Um, I thought I thought that was really good. I mean, it was a standard like politician answer, which you don't usually get out of him. But it was just very much like we're following it closely. We're doing everything we can. He was saying we've had as of that time had 149 cases, and like 11 people died or something like that. So
Right.
like it's being curtailed. He was saying about stopping travel with China. So I mean it was he gave good answers in that place, I guess. But I haven't seen much else about him
Yeah, well,
responding to it.
and understand. I don't want to go. I don't want to get into a long conversation about the coronavirus or anything, or his
Yeah.
how he's handling it, other than to say that he is even though the media has a way of decontextualizing or spinning what he says, he's not. He just isn't giving the strength vibe that he needs to be giving in this time,
Mm.
in addressing this. Not it's more of a I mean he was like, why can't we just use the flu virus to stave off some of this? Well, that won't work. These are different things. things like this.
Yeah.
He's just got to think about the things that he's saying in public, whether it's in interviews or whether it's on Twitter. He needs to think about these things because I think it's going to cause issues with the amount of trust people have in him as this moves forward and as we get closer to the election. Yeah.
Yeah. We got Midget B saying this week was fucking weird. All day Wednesday, I thought it was Tuesday. All day Thursday, I thought it was Wednesday. I had something similar happen to me on Tuesday, but it was Tuesday morning when I went into work for like half an hour. Uh, it was like 5 a.m. when I was about to leave, and I was, said to the our receptionist we have, I was like, all right, I'll see you on Monday, and I was like, wait, wait, it's Tuesday.
Okay.
So,
So,
but yeah, so I mean that kind of thing happens. It doesn't usually happen to me more than once in a week. Like it won't happen
right. Well,
multiple days in a row. But
see, I had the same thing on Tuesday, Wednesday myself. And I have
uh,
so now hearing this from two other people, I
yeah,
have a hypothesis that
I mean, the Matrix
I've
reset
suddenly
itself.
formed, right? Two things have happened. We have a leap year, and this weekend is time we set our clocks adjust for daylight savings time.
Oh,
So maybe subconsciously, because of that added day and because of our normal proclivity to switch time, it was our bodies having a hiccup, like a deja vu in the Matrix, as it were.
nah, dude, we
Uh,
jumped timelines. We're in a different timeline
is
now.
that what it is?
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
shit!
we all skipped over to a different timeline.
So
So hopefully this one will be good, though.
I see Ed lurking around. He's wondering what we're going to be talking about because
So
the
we're gonna be
title didn't.
initiating. We're gonna be initiating Robert into libertarianism. He's gonna become a
Oh
real
shit!
libertarian today.
Not, yeah, don't even think it's going to happen just overnight.
It's
It's
gonna
not going
happen
to be that kind
today.
of process. No, if the title, as I said in the description, is after watching what's happened with the Democrats in the last 3 years, and watching what's happening in the Democratic race, it's come down to two competitors. It's Joe Biden or it's Bernie Sanders, and I'm of a mind that if Bernie Sanders gets the primary nod, then I I don't know that he will win against Trump. And if he does, it will clog up the government so much with everybody trying to fight what he's trying to put forward. And it'll happen on both sides. I mean, there will be Democrats opposing some of his more
Yeah,
socialist moves as well. So we're going to have major bog downs while he's that I just see it if he were to get the presidency. Otherwise, Trump will beat him, and we continue on with Trump. But I'm of a mind, of course, I don't want 4 more years of Trump. It's I don't think I can tolerate that and not I can't cast a vote for that, as it were. But if Joe Biden gets the presidency, I'm concerned about, if he were to win over Trump, which I think is going to be difficult.
yeah.
I don't know how strong the Obama wave will be to carry
I
him
don't think it's
to the
gonna be good.
presidency. Um, but when it's all said and done, if he were to get it, I fear the resurgence of the social justice movement, because he's Uncle Joe and he has this way of capitulating. Like he wants to give quarters to his nieces and nephews so they can go get sweets behind their parents' backs. He wants to give in and
Right.
not have like real hard set rules. I don't think he's strong on any particular policy stance like he should be.
Well, the only thing I would say would be strong on is the foreign policies being Middle East. He wants to. He would want to continue
Right.
the same wars that have been going on and maybe even escalate, which is my biggest concern with him. Not
Right.
even his senility.
Right.
My main concern would be just continuing what Obama was doing, which yes, Obama didn't start it,
Right.
but he could have ended it any time,
Right, and
and he didn't.
I don't want to see the forward movement of that kind of mindset,
Right.
and very easily I could see Joe Biden doing so, trying to live up to that that mindset, that idol he created out of Obama in his mind, because
Hmm.
that's what it seems like to me. that Obama was doing great things. Now he may be a totally different person when he gets into office, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure that I want to run that risk.
Well, that is his best move to make on, as the vice president, you know, trying to campaign for president. It is a good idea to invoke,
Right,
especially if the president was popular, which Obama was popular.
right.
You know, it
Yeah, you want
it,
to
it is the right
capitalize
move
on
to
that.
make. Yeah.
Yeah. So that leaves me at a point where it's okay. I don't see any valid option on either side for me, and it's not even about character. Yes, that factors in with Trump, as you know how I feel about his
Yeah.
character as a president. It does factor in as far as he's concerned, but his policy moves aren't enough to outweigh gaining my vote. So that leaves me with who do I vote for? And the Libertarian Party is, of course, the primary first third party that any
Hmm.
sensible voter would think of. You've got the Green Party, you've got these other parties, but they're inconsequential when it comes to anything.
Yeah.
The least inconsequential of all of them is the Libertarian Party, and I do agree with certain aspects of the Libertarian Party, though I don't know that the Libertarian Party conforms to present day society. So, my challenge to you, John, is that between now and the time November for the election is for you to give me, you know, attempt to in some way to bring me over into that line of thinking and reasoning
Yeah.
to get a vote for the Libertarian Party, because of course the more votes that the Libertarian Party gets in each subsequent campaign is a stronger move to them getting on the stage. But
Yeah.
I think it's important to address whether or not the Libertarian Party is the right third party, and I figure the best place to go for that is a libertarian, which you seem to be, and you've seen where I stand on libertarianism. So,
Yeah.
first I've got to ask you, I'll ask you this question from the standpoint of your personal education, understanding of libertarianism, and your ideology. Are you more of a historical libertarian or a Renaissance libertarian, do you think?
Um, Not sure exactly what you mean by
Well,
those.
historical being that your libertarian values are based on the fundamentals of libertarianism in this country, the beginning of it all, the founding fathers,
Okay.
etc.
Yeah.
That more
Hmm.
historical mindset or a more Renaissance libertarian viewpoint that does account for, say, the last 100 years of the evolution of
Right.
our society and our technology and our increase in population.
I got you. Okay. So I would say then, yeah, I'm more of a historical libertarian in that, um, I believe the values that created this country, and that's what it is. It's just about self determination, personal responsibility, basically freedom from the government, freedom to do what you want, so long as you're not affecting somebody else, or you're not violating someone else's rights. That's obviously the quick and easy version. No, the only reason I asked you to clarify is because Renaissance, that's kind of where libertarian values started. It was like in the Renaissance.
Oh, okay, I understand what you're saying
Yeah.
there, but okay.
So that's why I was asking for the clarification. Uh, but yeah, so basically a return to the values that we had when this country started, about the government being small and mostly ineffectual, the people being able to affect the government, like the government working for the people instead of the people being slaves to the government as we have now. Just those kind of basic concepts.
Um, and so if you see yourself more leaning towards that mindset, um, how do those values transition into the present day to serve as a foundation for a forward-thinking libertarian party in the present day?
Right. So those values are the foundation, right? And then you build on those values. Um, so I mean, if you want to give me like a specific issue,
Okay, so
Then I can kind of put, but it's just to say, oh, what, how do you account for the last 100 years, or how do you, look forward? Well, it depends on what we're talking about, right?
okay, so let's look at something along the lines of a hot topic issue, primarily from Bernie Sanders, is the idea of income inequality.
Hmm.
It does cause significant issues within a society. So how is that seen, income inequality, from a libertarian standpoint, and how is it addressable in the
Okay.
present day?
Yeah, I mean, income inequality is a fact of life. It's going to happen. It's happened forever, and it will continue to happen. But the important part is that everyone is held to the same standards. That's what the important thing is. If someone can make $1 billion, fucking good for you. Absolutely good for you. That means that means you fucking dedicated yourself for one. You gave up your life basically to, starting a company, or whatever thing you did to make that money, you've made that money. Excellent, right? Problem comes when that money makes you above the law. That is where the issue comes in for me. Um, so yeah, no, I mean, income inequality is going to happen no matter what. Even in these socialist countries, they have vast income inequalities.
Right.
That's just a talking point. That means nothing because all you're gonna. I mean, so first of all, there's another libertarian concept of the non-aggression principle, right? So stealing someone's wealth is theft, and theft violates the NAP.
Right.
Even if you're trying to give it to people who are poor, you know what I mean? That's still theft. You've still stolen from somebody.
Well, what about the idea that that there's some inherent responsibility for an individual who is, making millions or billions? This idea that they're somehow obligated to reinvest that, part, of that money back into their community. In effect, not to tag this, but the idea of, trickling down, share the wealth. Do they have a responsibility to do that from a community level?
Well, they do that. First of all, through wages is one thing. They reinvest in their own company, and especially in things like R&D. If we're talking about one of these massive, companies, they're producing products that make people's lives easier, whatever that might be. Whether it be, the laptop, or the camera that I'm using, or the microphone I'm using. Anything really. Your the phone in your pocket. Uh, any of those things. Those are things that are designed to make people's lives easier, and
Well,
that's what they do. That's it is giving back to the community, but not for free.
right. Well,
They are trying to make money, but they're also employing people, and that's what a lot of people don't understand when they say, oh, this person's worth, X amount, and it's like, okay, yeah, that person might be worth that much, but that doesn't mean they have that much in cash. You know what I mean? So
right.
there's a lot of money going back into things.
Okay. And I can see that. I can, I can also argue that, from to a certain perspective, that can be seen as self motivated. You know,
Okay, yeah,
for the company, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's they have their own specific motives for that, and that's about profit. Is the argument
yeah.
that could be made there? So yes, of course you need to employ people. Are you employing those people at a livable wage? These kind of things.
Well, that's
This is
yeah,
where
and
we
that's
get
up to
into these
recommendation.
responsibilities that are asked for from the community in the present day. This is why I say, okay, does the libertarian really ascribe to present day values or mindsets? Um, so yeah, I see that as I can understand how that's giving back to the community, but all of those things do have personal motive involved. Um,
Sure.
but the
But I
idea,
mean, just because someone has a personal motive, does that make their actions not good morally?
um, no, no, I won't say that. I won't deny that it leaves an open gray area for the naysayer to jump in on.
Sure.
So Ron Helton has appeared and has been chatting with us a little bit. He says the founders did
Yeah,
not want a direct tax, so the citizenry would be able to shut
that's
down the
true.
government when it got out of control. He said, now we
Hmm.
have the Fed and direct taxes. We are basically screwed and will not be able to change this country without a revolution, in his opinion. Robert, he says, I'm confused about wealth. My confusion about wealth is because we have never lived in a pure free market system. We live in crony capitalism, and I agree there.
And
The
to be
gov-
fair, yeah, Robert is he's making a devil's advocate argument in that case,
right.
and he's just he's asking questions about why he should become a libertarian.
Um,
So
yeah, and
those are
this is
obviously good questions to ask.
and this is capitalism. Whenever I think about libertarianism, and this is where capitalism is the biggest demon in and amongst it all, because it it is one of those areas that, in multiple ways, um, has brought about a cry from the community, the citizenry, for things like uh, you know wages, federal minimum wages, and arguments about wage inequality, and gender and racism, and all of that is happening within the capitalism you know realm. But then we have, how much money they're making, and those companies that become so big that they're above the law, as you were talking about
Hmm.
earlier, or too big to fail. The impacts they'll
Yeah,
have.
that's the biggest bullshit ever.
Right,
Too big to fail. My
right.
ass, just fail.
And how
Jesus
intrinsically some of
Christ.
these companies are tied in with not only the financial world, but also the political world. So, you know, the that is where I'm like, okay, so how do we not listen to, a democratic socialist who's saying, I'm going to put a stop to billionaires, because those things that you talk about that a company does to give back to the community in the present day and age, much like Ron Helton pointed it out, this crony capitalism has created a scenario where we only see that as the carrot hanging that in front of us, that these companies use. We employ people and we make lives easier. Okay, great. Yeah, we see that dangling out there, but we're not feeling the impact of that, right? So
Hmm.
how as a libertarian does anyone address crony capitalism? Is it what's the approach there to drive it down?
Well, you end lobbying for one. You end like crony capitalism in general. So a lot of these bills that like they are technically written by people in the like representatives in the House,
Right.
but they're obviously either heavily influenced or completely influenced by lobbyists. I mean, that's what they do, right? That's their job as a lobbyist is to influence legislation in their favor. What we need to do is get rid of that and not have and repeal most, if not all, regulations on corporations.
So um, now you have said before that, like, we can't institute things, like too many changes at once, right?
Right.
So, we've talked about taxes. I know how the libertarian mindset on taxes is taxes are theft, just depending on the level of
Hmm.
government that is asking for taxes. At the state level, I understand that there should be a certain level of tax that's coming from the
Well,
people
there's a lot of
for the,
libertarians who would say any kind of
of
taxation,
course,
but
right,
but that's not where I stand yet.
right. Um, so, the idea that do you what do you institute? Do you attack crony capitalism first? Do you attack taxes? Where do you start in breaking down the structure that's there if you can't make these changes all at one
Yeah,
time? What's got to be the
that's a
step?
really easy question to answer, and Ron Helton has just answered it. Actually, taking power away from the government will prevent it from being bought by those seeking legislation in their favor. 100% accurate. Yeah, if you start gutting the federal government, then who cares how much, what money they're getting, because they don't have the power to do anything. And then that money dries up because they no longer have the power to legislate like that.
I see Boulder Vaughn has
Yes,
shown up in
Boulder
the
Vaughn
chat.
is
Boulder
here.
Vaughn in the house.
What's up, dude?
So yeah, okay, and then that's where it begins to be. I start to hit rocky terrain when I think about, okay, so how do you approach taking power away from the government, right? So you always look at, like, okay, a president walks in, they're talking about what they're going to do in the first 100 days. Well, as a libertarian, what do you do in your first 100 days? Where do you start taking away? Do you immediately go after lobbying? Do you immediately go after those kind of things, or do you start repealing things? Do you start
Yeah.
taking away tax loopholes for corporations because you're going to need tax dollars to fund the other changes that you're going to make, right? There's got to be
No,
some
you
balance in there, right?
right. What you do is you save money. I know it's crazy for the for anyone in the government to hear, but you save money by getting rid of redundant and completely unnecessary, government agencies, especially those alphabet agencies.
So,
You can get rid of the FCC easily.
like having 7 different intelligence agencies in our
Right,
government,
exactly, yeah.
right?
So you can start there. That would be an excellent start.
Okay,
You
so
just stop that nonsense.
now there's a lot of waste there. I see.
Oh
I
yeah.
get it, right? But then, how do you turn around and tell? Well, I guess it's easy to tell the American public that, okay, we're just gonna toss all of this. Like, we're gonna get rid of these things, and we're just gonna toss everything we spent on, all the money we put into it, and doing these things, and then we're just gonna toss it. It gets tough to think of how you sell that to the American public, much less, um, you know, if any of this is even possible without having a fully libertarian
Yeah.
Congress, get your whole House and Senate together in a libertarian way of thinking, because that's the other problem that I run into is like,
Yeah.
how do you? I mean, can a third party be successful, or does it need to replace one of the two parties? That is the really deeper question that I come to: is, do we need to replace one of the other party with libertarians?
Yeah. And with the way that the Democrats are going, that might happen, but probably not. Um, yeah, I mean, you either need to replace one of the two main parties because people are used to a two-party system, which is extremely unfortunate. Like even people who will, criticize the Democrats all day and all night, they're still gonna vote Democrat. It's I don't know. I don't know what else to do to get people away from that mindset, other than just doing what I'm doing now, just being on here and talking about it. But it works though. I know it does work because first of all, it worked on me, you know. Um, and secondly, it's worked on quite a few people. That's why the Libertarian Party is the fastest growing party in the country.
Now, now I've heard you say that before. When you say the fastest growing party in the country, can
That
you
does include Republicans and Democrats.
can
Yeah.
you give me a time frame that is talking about? Is that the fastest? What? How long has this increase been going on?
I'm not 100% sure. At least since 2015.
Okay, so
That's when I started looking into it.
would it be safe to say, to a certain extent, that Trump, in his bold, daring, highly unorthodox approach to his campaign and gaining the presidency, has had an impact on the libertarian way of thinking,
Had an impact on
or
it.
on the increase
Um,
of the libertarian uh,
it's possible. I mean, that is
following?
why I voted Libertarian in 2016. I didn't vote for Trump, and I've said this plenty of times on the air, but we have new people all the time. So Yeah, I mean, I voted for Gary Johnson, but it was because I didn't want to vote for Trump at the time, and I certainly didn't want to vote for Hillary. So I was like, here's my third option. I'm gonna go ahead and put my vote that way. So I mean, and I know I'm not the only one. I know that there are plenty of other people. I don't know. I don't have numbers or anything, but I know that there are plenty of other people who did that exact thing. So yeah, I mean, it certainly could have an impact, but I don't know if it's going to have enough for anytime soon that the Libertarian Party will be, involved in politics. Really, I'm
Sure.
going to be honest. Yeah.
So you've expressed recently, and Ron, I wanted to point out, Ron said there should be only one party, the party that obeys the Constitution and enforces limited
Yeah. See, I don't
government.
think there should be any parties
Well,
at
yeah,
all. I mean, the George Washington warned against parties in his farewell address, and I think he was right. I mean, we can see the culmination of it happening right now.
well, we weren't a one-party system in the beginning until the Whigs broke off and created a two-party system, right?
Well, no, they're the Whigs and the Democrats, and then the Whigs broke off, and there were the Democrats, the Whigs, and the Republicans, because the Republicans broke off of the Whigs, and then after that, the Whigs kind of faded out after a while, and then it was just Republican and Democrat.
Were wait, were the Whigs always existent,
As far as
or
I know,
because I was
shortly after Washington left office, I don't know, I don't remember exactly when it was.
yeah, because I could have sworn, I could have sworn there was a short period of time where there wasn't a second party, and I thought it was the Whigs kind of cropped up in that very early
It could be.
first couple of years, first few
That could be
years,
the case. That could be the
and grew
case.
in power, and then made their move as a
Yeah.
second party. Um, but my historical. The best one to talk to about this would be Cameron if he were here.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, he is right outside that door, but
oh, is he?
yeah.
Yeah. Good luck getting him in here.
Yeah.
Tell him to get on his phone, join us. But he says Ron says he's registered as a Republican, but always leaned to Libertarian.
Oh, early
Um,
19th century? Yeah, that's not too far.
what?
Ed says it was early 19th century, and I'm saying yeah, that's not too far away because the Constitution was 1789, I believe. 1789, 1786, something like that.
Well,
So that's not too far off.
so now another hot button issue, another very important conversation that we've been having since I don't know, since 9/11. Honestly, is I think really what made it more impactful. Is about immigration, is about other people coming
Hmm.
into this country. My mindset is on
Yeah,
isolationism, which I think is more extreme than the libertarian mindset. Um,
it is, especially the party, especially the Libertarian Party. They are the exact opposite.
Now, where do you're kind of middle of the road on that, though. Am I correct? You don't necessarily toe the party line with that mindset. Is that
Not
correct?
at all. I don't toe the Libertarian Party line at all on that. I'm completely against their immigration policies.
Okay, so so would it be safe to say that they're very similar to the Democratic mindset as far as open borders and
Yeah, I
immigration
was going
is
to say they're at least they're honest about it. At least I'll give them that. At least they're honest about wanting open borders,
okay?
and they do say open borders, and they say it's a human's right to travel. Uh, what is it? Travel unmolested, which is kind of there's definitely merit to the argument. Just practical in a practical sense, it doesn't work.
See, and that's
Um,
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, no, I absolutely understand. But we have that same kind of deal within the states, right? Where you can go from Florida to Georgia without having to pass, some kind of immigration
Well,
thing,
sure,
or having to show your ID at the border or anything like that. You can just
right,
drive right through. There's no problem.
sure, But if you want to take up residence in one of those states, you've got to be documented for that state.
Wait. Oh, yeah, yeah. To live in the state. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So
Right.
you've got to enter the
But there's
state legally.
no.
You have a time frame to get that changed over. So it's much
Yeah.
the same mindset with immigration as what we should have, right? We definitely have to have at least that much
Well,
mindset with
it's
immigration.
easier to become a citizen of a state from one state to another than it
Sure, I
is,
get that.
and it should be that way
Right.
because, at least you're still American even if you move from Florida to
Right.
Georgia or vice versa, or
There's
whatever.
very little
You
reason
know.
for passing through America unless you're on a plane on a layover,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
I don't see a lot of traffic that's going from Mexico to Canada, because that's really the
Right.
only pass through that you have when you talk about that. So, but you know, I that's where
But even
libertarianism
that, because hang
starts.
on, because even that, what you're talking about, even if you're going to drive from Mexico to Canada, all you need is a passport to do that. Because
Sure.
you can stay in the country for 6 months with just a passport without any kind of visa or anything.
Right.
If you're just traveling, you can stay for 6 months. So you have 6 months to go from Mexico to Canada, which would take you probably like 10 days or so. I don't know the time frame,
Well,
but
yeah, and I get that.
yeah.
There's
So you
legal
can't
ways,
do
but
that.
there's legal documented ways to pass through. Um, but the problem that I start to see with libertarianism when we talk about immigration, like you said, the party itself has a very broad spectrum with immigration.
Hmm.
Um, that's when the party doesn't start to speak to the nationalism that I feel within myself,
Yeah.
because I think that's important. We are America. It's that's a part that needs
Uh,
to factor in when we talk
That
about
should mean
immigration,
something. Yeah.
right? And that is where libertarianism begins to fail me, where I'm like, okay, how can that be resolved? Is there anything in the libertarian ideology or the party that balances it enough that makes it workable in the present day and age? Because immigration today
Yeah.
is not the same as it was you know when we had our
Yeah.
early libertarian start.
So one thing that could be done, that would be done in a libertarian, controlled Congress and presidency, um, is first of all the welfare state either not existing or being drastically reduced. That will help a lot of immigration not happen because it
Because
will
you
only
see that
be
as a draw.
right. People want to come here because they can get, they can become citizens, get money. If they're poor, they can and try and
Okay.
eke out a living. Whereas if we didn't have that, only the people who were entrepreneurs would come over. Only the people who had like real skills who could make a living,
Well,
and more than just a living, do well, would come over here,
well,
and it'd be much smaller amount of people.
well. In regards to that, let me ask a side question here. Is that a problem? One of the problems, one of the roots problems of immigration in Europe. Because I know that there's
Oh,
countries in
absolutely.
Europe that have UBIs, that the government takes care of their citizens in different ways,
Hmm.
directly. Um,
No, that's the biggest draw to people immigrating to Europe is the EU. As soon as they get there, they get money and they get a free house and they get whatever free schooling. Which of course we get free schooling now, but you know what I mean. They get just free everything, free healthcare, just everything, just handed to them.
oh,
That's a huge draw
I mean,
for them to go over there.
I have to interject real quick, since you mentioned
Hmm.
that, and I thought it was kind of ironic. Um, not that I'm happy about it, but Italy.
Hmm.
We know that the coronavirus is popping off over in Italy right now, right?
Yeah.
But they also at the same time were starting this campaign. They were putting it out there, trying to get people to move to this town in Italy, and basically the town itself would pay you to come there and live as
Yep.
long as you have a child and you live there for a certain period of time. And they would pay they were going to pay like 80 to 90% of your rent and your monthly budget to come live there. And I thought it was kind of ironic that that happened at the same time. But I'm like, you have,
Yeah.
the town is declining and going away. So, you have things like this. It's like, okay, you're asking for people to immigrate into your only qualification is that you have a child. And,
Yeah, hopefully
train
it's
where you,
yours too, and not
right,
someone that you just stole.
right, to get into the
Jesus
country.
Christ, that's fucking horrible.
Uh,
God damn, dude. Like, do they not realize how exploitable that is? I don't
yeah,
know. Maybe they have measures in place to deal with it, but
it's possible.
I
I'm
don't
sure
know.
they would run checks on people, the
Well,
process,
I don't know though. With the EU, you
but
never know.
basically giving you, setting you up in either, in a house, sometime or a furnished house, whatever the case may be. You could own the house, that kind of stuff. And it was, it's like, oh, that's
Fucking
beautiful. But of
ridiculous.
course, then you have a coronavirus popping off, and it's like, no thanks.
Yeah.
Never mind. I'm not bringing a child over there for that. Sorry.
And Ron Helton saying free schooling here, no, overpriced and ineffective. Yeah, I didn't mean like free. Obviously, it's not free, right? Um, I was just using
Well,
the common vernacular.
the public school system is, for many intents and purposes, the public school system is relatively free. Granted, you pay for it in property taxes,
Right, it's
but
not free, right? Yeah,
the
it's free of charge to use it.
if,
And but that's the thing is, it's also mandatory, which is
well,
kind of
sure,
ridiculous.
um,
Yeah, that's fair, midget. You're right. Yeah, EU stop child trafficking. They're party to it. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Well, so let's think about that, John. So there's another area where I know that we have government regulation. So from a Libertarian Party standpoint, you can give me both perspectives, how they think and how you think if they differ. But what about education? This idea of
Hmm.
mandatory education, the expectation that we have, kids going to school, because it is important to educate your
Of
child.
course. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and we can't trust everyone to educate their child at home the proper way. So, how do you address education, and is it mandatory in the libertarian world?
So, a couple of things. One, obviously, getting rid of the Department of Education and allowing the states to have their own curriculums. Um, Privatizing the schools, which we talked about before. You're concerned with, Apple starting a school and then, requiring people to work for them after they're done with schooling. Which I get the concern, but like first of all, you can't make a child sign a contract, before they're 18, and the parents can't, sign a contract for their child that takes place after they're 18.
Right.
So, I mean that's not going to be the case. And that's also exploitative. Yeah, exploitative. Uh, so yeah, definitely privatizing schools and getting rid of the Department of Education. And even with homeschooling, if someone wants to homeschool their kids and they do a shitty job, I mean that's on the parents. You know, and that'll come out that hey, homeschooling isn't effective if it's not. Then less people will do it because most people want their children to be successful.
Okay. So, in a world,
So so I mean, like I would say, even with my extensive knowledge of history, um, general grasp on the English language for the most part, I still wouldn't think I'm qualified to teach a kid everything they need to know in order to survive out in the world. So I wouldn't want to homeschool my kids necessarily.
okay, so in a world of privatized education with no central overwatch, if I how do I educate what do I do about educating my child if I can't afford to send them to school? Because if it's privatized, I'm assuming there's going to be costs involved.
Of course, yeah.
That, and what happens to those that can't afford to send their child to school?
So obviously, then the child wouldn't go to school. You'd have to homeschool.
Right.
But the problem with that is, yes, private schools are very expensive right now. But in a place where there's no state funded schooling and everything is privatized, obviously the market will handle that. There will be, people, a competition between schools. Obviously the best schools around will charge more, but then there will be other schools that won't charge as much. They won't be as good, but they won't charge as much. And I mean, we see that today, even with our state funded schools. There's some schools are better than others. It has to do with how much money they're getting from the government, how much the teachers actually care, depending on where they are and who they are. Then one of the biggest problems with teachers not making enough money is teachers union stops that from happening like a lot. They're the ones in the way of teachers.
So,
So I mean, yeah. So you would pay your teachers more in a private school. In fact, my mom works at a private school, at a Catholic school. She makes way more than your average like public school teacher because it's a great school.
so do you? Let me ask a question about the market in regards to the next question I want to ask about
Hmm.
education. Um, is the free market capable of balance? You said there would be income inequality. It's inherent,
Yeah.
and so does that assume, or I guess the best way to put it, does that assume that there is going to be a certain sector of the society that is going to have no choice but to homeschool because they're in low income areas where they can't afford the schools in the area? So they're left with no choice but to homeschool. And then to top that off, are unable because they're still trying to work to live. They're
Yeah.
unable to homeschool as well. So there will be a certain sector of children that are not getting an education.
I think so. Despite people's best efforts, yeah, there will be an amount who will do that. Um, However, the thing about, at least with libertarianism, charity is a big thing, right? So I think that there will be a lot of schools that are funded mainly through charity. And so those would be the ones that offer, hey, you can come here, for free, and we live off of donations. They keep the school running off of donations. I definitely see that as a thing that will happen. So I think it will be a lot less than what you think it would be. But even with that, yeah, I think there would be some who slip through the cracks, and I mean we have that now too.
Um,
We still have that.
and just a quick shout out, Wyatt has shown up and is
Hey,
in the
hey,
holler with the
what
big
up?
yo. So, from an education standpoint, do you believe that with the Libertarian Party in power, from as far as the government is concerned,
Hmm.
um, a an increase or a decrease in um, our education level in this country? Um, you know,
Hmm.
what
Okay,
where do you think
so
we'll go from in
so
that
what I
matter?
think will happen is that the amount of educated people will dip slightly, will decrease slightly. However, the quality of education will increase dramatically. So the vast majority of people who would be educated would be more educated than they are currently.
So and so having a sector of uneducated people in the society is a fair trade off for that
I think
in the
so.
libertarian mindset.
I think anything that gives more freedom is a good trade off, and that's what you would have.
Look
You
at
would
me.
have more freedom and less oppression, but yes, some people are going to suffer under that, and that's obviously unfortunate. I mean, I'm not happy about that. I'm not, trying
Okay.
to go for it, but that's just how the case would be. Some people are lazy. Some people,
Right.
some people don't have the capabilities of, doing the things that need to be done. But I mean, that's just the way life is, and it's not fair. But that's the way it's always been. That's the way it's always going to be.
Okay.
And hey, Michael Vega's in the chat too. What's up, man?
Did you see what Wyatt said? He said that
Make up a party in government class. I like it, dude.
yeah, that should
Make
be
one up. Make up the John party.
okay.
That would be awesome.
So when we talk about income inequality, when we talk about education, we talk about these things that have an impact on groups of people in a society. Um, we also
Yeah, exactly what Ron Helton's saying, actually. You have people now who go to school and get practically nothing out of it. They're more suited to manual or skilled labor. Yeah, exactly.
okay,
It's a lot of things you don't need to know in school in order to practice a trade.
right.
But
So
there's
that
always a place in society for people.
well, that's where I the next question comes in. Okay, well, what do you as a government do to address that sector of the population, knowing that because of low income, low education levels, etc., these are the precursors to a more crime-ridden society area, sector of society.
Sure.
These kind of things are going to happen, and you want to address that. So, do you address it from can you address it from a federal level as a libertarian, or do you put pressure on states to
Yeah.
handle these problems?
Yeah, that's up to the states. Yeah, absolutely. It's up to the states to enforce their own laws.
Well, I understand it's up to them to enforce their own laws, but I guess what I'm saying is, how do you address, you know, turning that population into a better atmosphere that doesn't, because that's the mindset that we have with all these regulations that
Yeah.
our government puts in place is we need to address the core root of the problem, which is bringing the poverty level up. That's what all the talk is, right? Around these policy decisions is about enriching those societies so that they are less prone to move into you know, the the crime sector, as it were. So
Yeah.
is that not something that the libertarian mindset takes into account, or it just addresses it from you broke the law? It doesn't matter what caused it.
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, a way to stop people from feeling the need, at least people who commit crimes, we're assuming people who commit crimes out of necessity and not out of malice, right? Or any kind of other issue, maybe mental issues or whatever. Those are different things. We've talked about
Right.
crimes of necessity. If you're going to steal food or something like that because you don't have money,
Right.
that's a different thing. In that case, you would do things like encouraging people to take up a trade, go into a trade school, something like
Right.
that, like we talked about before. Hey, if you can't make it in, the regular education, we'll teach you how to. I mean, screw. You don't have to learn how to dig ditches. We'll teach you how to work on cars.
Right.
We'll teach you how to, uh, do air conditioning or flooring or plumbing. Any number of things
Right,
that are out
which
there to
which
do.
which no one's going to teach them for free. Now that in and of itself opens the door for indentured servitude type, education paths, as it were. I understand how trade schools have traditionally worked. I get that, but in a
Hmm.
society where it's like, okay, you don't have any other choice but to go to this trade school, so the trade-off
You
is
always have a
you,
choice.
well, you're when you're a kid, the parents are making your decisions for you, as it were.
Yeah.
But you see what I'm saying? Like, if this is the only option, okay, well, this is the trade off. Since you can't afford to pay for your child to go to this trade school, here's the expectation when they come out of the trade school, right? So I can see the open door to that. But ultimately, it's like I understand that this is where these social programs have kicked off. Is we have welfare in this idea that if we put money into these people's hands, failure as the system may be, that's the mindset is to try and bring those
Right. I
communities
understand
up.
the mindset, but let's look at the results.
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
there's still crime all over the place,
Oh,
especially in
absolutely.
major cities, right? I mean, so just the idea of just throwing good money after bad is not working, and we keep doing it.
Okay.
I think we need to try a different approach, which would be, first of all, lifting these regulations. First of all, not making school mandatory. I mean, I understand why we do it, and yeah, it makes our numbers look good, but we're not even in the top. What is it? I think we're like 18th in education or something like that. Like we're not in the top 5 or top 10 even. We're suffering when it comes to education.
Sure, sure,
Like
and
screw it. Like why are
we
we
have
trying to
for
look good to the rest of the world? Let's do what actually works instead of
well,
what looks good.
well, whenever I talk about our education level, one of the things that's the forefront in my mind is that we have always been at the forefront of technology and progression in this country with moving forward and moving outward and growing and expanding in our our reach and our capability. We've always we've been very innovative. We've been very forward thinking, and that education, having the right intelligent people in the right places in this country have done amazing things for us. And that's not to say that we don't have those people now, but I would say that we've had a significant dumbing down of our society, and I
Yeah,
will blame our educational system on that.
absolutely.
But I think that it has
But
a
it's also a problem of motivation on the people who are going to school. And that's the issue, right? If someone doesn't want to learn something, you can talk at them all day and
sure,
all night and they're not going to, retain the information. And especially if it's something that they don't want to learn, they're not going to learn it. Like me. Like I was not interested in math or science at all during school, and I just didn't learn it. I mean, I can do simple math. I can do the standard, addition, subtraction, division, multiplication. Outside of that, I'm screwed. You know, if I ever need to do any kind of algebra or calculus or trigonometry, I'm screwed. Never gonna
right,
happen because I'm just not interested. Same thing with science. I'm just
right.
not interested in it, so I'm not gonna learn it. But when I was in history class, it was the only class that I didn't. Well, history and English. That's the only time I didn't like just doze off or read a book in the middle of it or whatever. You know, it's the only thing I was actually interested in learning, and that's all I really learned in school, which I could have done on my own. When I did, I did
And
that often on my own.
and that's how I was with school. I mean, but I will say that I did grow up at the tail end of a time where and in a place where there was still a focus on education. There was still there was no it wasn't teaching to the test. Yes, we took a cat
Yeah,
test, just to see where we stood. That was a thing, but we weren't teaching to that test. They were just like, oh well, here's this test. We take it every year.
yeah.
It's just to see where you stand. Everything else was just educating us. Now, of course, it was the Midwest, so of course, you know, we were 5 years behind anybody else in education, or 10 or more. Who knows?
Yeah.
Um, but you can
But see,
catch up
but
with
see, the
it.
thing is, you educated yourself
Right.
afterwards.
Well, I continued to, I educated myself after school, yes, at home, and then after I got out of, my last 3 years, I dropped out of high school because I fucked off for the last, 3 years that I was in high school because
Yeah.
my world changed and I was like, oh shit. But yeah, as long as you continue to educate yourself, but that doesn't, it's difficult to say that people will do that. And
Well, people
it's
who want to will. People who don't won't. Obviously, I know it sounds like an obvious statement to make, but
sure.
but that's what fixes it.
It's
People are going to learn the things that they want to learn and not learn the things that they won't don't want to learn. So that's why I'm saying this curriculum of this is everything you have to learn. Some of it, sure, especially when you're a
right,
kid, like a real young. I'm talking about like elementary school.
right.
Like yeah, you kind of need to know math and English and maybe a little bit of science and especially in history. You know, um, yeah, you kind of want to get like a baseline, a foundation there. After that, though, I mean, they should pretty much start learning, like exploring things that they want to learn, figure out what they want to learn, and then kind of go with that.
Okay, so then how about if we get if we look at the sticky parts of it, and yeah, thanks Vega Robert. I grew up in a um, but what about the idea? So, if you have people that say, well, "What I don't have a," how do you get people to swallow the fact that they don't have a right to an education in this country? Um,
Yeah, well,
that's
that's difficult.
right.
You have to teach people first of all, what a right is, and secondly, what they are. Because I mean, especially now, we're just so inundated with everything's a right, every single thing. You know, I don't know, it's fucking ridiculous. So that's the problem, though, is that word is diluted, and it was
Sure.
not recent that started. That's that's been going on for decades, probably even
Right.
longer than that. Where every single thing is a right, and so that means, okay, what's a right then? It's whatever I want.
It's the pursuit of
That's
happiness, bruh. It's the pursuit of
Yeah,
happiness that
yeah.
gets them.
The,
Because
the,
I
the
want
operative
to,
word is
if
pursuit.
I want to be
You don't
happy,
have a right to
right?
happiness. You have the operative word is pursuit.
Oh no,
The
no,
government
no, no, no.
does not have to make you happy. It's not their job to make you happy.
Right.
That's the
And I get
issue.
it. I get it. But you see what I'm saying? I mean, that's,
Yeah.
they start to read into these things. It's like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, happiness to me is being educated enough to get a good job. And, they begin to play this in there. And they're like, okay, and then you have people like Bernie Sanders. You know, health care is a basic human right.
It's a human right. I don't know
Excuse
where
me.
any humans are, but
But of course,
yeah. I mean, that's a ridiculous thing, right? It's like, yes, you have a right to attempt to get yourself medical attention. You do not have the right for someone else's labor. That's the thing that they don't understand. You don't have a right to someone else's labor. If someone else does something, offers a service, or makes something, you don't have a right to that thing. You don't have a right to someone else's labor. It's very simple.
right. And
But people don't. First of all, people don't understand that, and secondly, they don't want to understand that. And that's probably the biggest issue right now is this like willful ignorance. It's
right.
inconvenient for me to not or to understand this, so I'm just going to go ahead and not. Or I want this thing to be true, so I'm just going to say it is.
Well, if the mob
When it's not.
mentality, if the mob mentality is, isn't, is willfully being that way, then it's easy to follow along with that and just go with the status quo.
Yeah.
Just as easy as it is to cast a vote for the toe in the party line. Um,
Right.
so, again, that comes, that brings me back to the original question. So, is the Libertarian Party the right party for the present day and age? Because I mean, some of these things, trying to institute some of these things, seems wholly insurmountable in our present society. The way we've been trained, taught, brainwashed, however you want to put it, our society has been brought to this point that we're at now, and I'm not sure if the libertarian mindset, even those people who are out there hollering and saying, "Oh, I want to carry the libertarian torch too," do they really understand the
Mm.
sacrifices that have to be made when it comes to this status quo that you currently live in?
Yeah. I mean, I would say a lot of them do. Obviously, some people, just like, yeah, freedom, screw socialism, which I agree with, but I don't know if a lot of people do understand exactly what that means. Exactly that means that, hey, you're on your own then. You have to want to be on your own to be a libertarian. And that
Right,
obviously I don't mean on your own as in like you don't have any other person around you, right? Obviously you have family, you have friends,
right,
community, whatever. But you don't have that safety net. You don't have the government just give you money because something went wrong in your life. And it's very unfortunate when that happens because there are times when it's not in your control, it's not in your power. But that's just the facts of life. And hopefully you have, friends or family who will take you in and help you get back on your feet. But it's not the government's job to do that. That's the thing.
so
That's the main thing, in fact.
does that, in that small bit vein right there, does that apply to things like natural disasters and situations that occur in the country,
Yeah.
or does the government have some responsibility to have like FEMA, you know
So I think the individual states certainly could have something like that if they want to. And if other states want to help out, so if Florida gets hit by a hurricane and devastates the East Coast, as happens all the time, Florida could have its own version of FEMA, and then other states could send help, which they have. When we had We had the most recent hurricane when Cameron and I went up to New Orleans. As we were going the other way were just shitloads of like electrical lines, like trucks. The trucks that service the lines. Tons of them coming from Georgia. Just shitloads of them going the other way, and that was like holy shit. But yeah, so obviously that sort of thing does happen. The federal government isn't required for that.
So no, and so it's not required. So again, so that means okay, there's no safety net again. So this is another situation where it's like, okay, I as a citizen have to look at this Libertarian Party and say, okay, they're not going to be there for me unless somebody steps on my rights.
The federal government isn't going to be there for you.
Right.
That's the main thing,
So
right?
right,
If a state wants to
which
have all this socialist stuff, more power to them, as long as they're not violating the Constitution. And
Which
that's what
that's
I
where that's where
right.
it winds up getting to is okay, now I have to depend on my state to do so.
Yeah,
Or as Ron Helton says, he says states helping states in times of natural disasters is how it used to be done. A lot less waste
exactly,
that way, and I get it.
exactly.
I understand. It's it's again, how do you is our country ready for that? Is it ready
At the
for
moment, no.
giving up all its safety nets, or even starting to give up its safety nets? Um,
At the moment, I would say no. There's
but
too many people who are not only reliant on it, but demanding more.
so then the reliance will continue, the demands will continue to grow. Um, so then that comes back to this idea that the only way for the Libertarian Party to make a change is through, as it's been out there touted, some sort of revolution, which is that where the Libertarian Party is going to excel? Is in its ability to pull off a coup, to pull off some sort of revolt against the existing government,
No,
or
no,
is
they
it
don't.
even
They
in
don't
their
have the spine
wheelhouse?
for it. They don't have the spine for it. No,
Right.
it wouldn't happen.
Which is
Because the whole
interesting,
point of
right?
the whole point of the Libertarian Party is to change things from the inside. That's their whole like mandate. That's what they want to do. So the whole thing is to avoid a revolution. So the party itself, no, they're not going to.
Isn't that the
But real quick though, just talk to the chat for a minute because I gotta pee. So I'll be
See, you
right
got to
back.
stop drinking so many beers. Michael, Michael, what is it? Oh, depend on myself. I could try to depend on myself, but but I don't know. It's this idea that that we don't have a choice without that. Just the revolution. I mean, I can't. Every path I go down, no matter which direction I would cast my vote, whether first, second, or third party, none of them seems to equate to a solution that I don't know that gets even the libertarian vote doesn't seem to me to be feasible that the party could do anything. So it all walks back to a revolution, and I don't know. There's who is that run by? The libertarians aren't going to hold a revolution, or it's going to be self-proclaimed revolutionaries, the libertarian revolutionaries. I mean, maybe I know Wyatt said that he has to work on on creating a party for his class. So is that what happens? Is that what the boogaloo, the big igloo energy, as you're saying, Michael Vega? I mean, what is that party, or what is that mindset, or is it just anarchy? Because you have to have a path to the end of that. Like, what is the end result of that? Who's behind it, and what's the end result? Ron, you say, I see no way out of this corrupt mess without a revolution. The problem is that instead of going libertarian, I suspect it will go more socialist or communist. Well, Yeah, but if you say that, if you think it'll go more socialist or communist, then you know, I know it won't address. It just creates a new set of issues, but that's what we're looking at with electing Bernie. I mean, that tells me that Bernie could be elected, but I don't necessarily see that happening. Um, you know, so that's Michael Bay said, I think it's anarchy and doomers, collapsitarians. Yeah. Uh, the coming economic collapse will determine whether this country goes toward liberty or more tyranny. And and see, that's that's what I was asking the chat. John is when it's all said and done, there's I don't know. I don't understand who would be behind this potential revolution. I just don't understand who it is,
Yeah,
because it's
there's no
not true
like,
libertarians.
as far as I know, there's no like leader or something. There's no one calling for revolution,
Right.
at least from like a leadership perspective. So
I guess
I
when
don't know, because
they
with our own, we had leaders, right? We had the
right.
founding fathers. They were the leaders of the revolution. Built their version of government. All that kind of nonsense. I don't think we have that in this day and age.
Well, now,
So if there was a revolution, that would be a ton of tiny factions. Maybe building alliances with each other for the time of the revolution, but after that, I would be afraid to know. You know what I mean? Like where it goes after that.
right. I mean, because
Once, yeah.
I don't know that it's going to be a libertarian thing, right? So, but I would ask this: is it possible that a self-proclaimed libertarian could stand up and coordinate the big boog mindset out there into something
Yeah, I agree
forward
with
moving?
Ed. We'll be led by Vermin Supreme.
Now, so I haven't gone too deep into this with you, and so
Yeah,
I his stage personality aside,
yeah,
um, what is it about? Because you've seriously said, you've given some serious indication that this is somebody you would vote
yes,
for from a libertarian mindset. Um,
yeah, yeah. But jokes aside, yeah, I would.
so, a what kind of things does he stand for that you're behind, and then B, is it legitimate in the present day and age, legitimately something that you could see happening?
I mean, so yeah, he's a libertarian, right? So he wants to completely gut the government, get rid of it. Oh shit. Uh, he wants freedom, obviously, for everyone. I doubt the pony thing is actually real, but that'd be kind of sweet. Um, you know, uh, yeah, I mean, his criticisms of everyone, of all the politicians, whether they be Republican or Democrat. He has a ton of criticism of them, and he's actually well spoken once he takes the boot off of his head. You know, so I recommend looking into him and looking into his real side as opposed to the satirical side.
I mean, so he speaks to policy, like he has
Yeah,
a policy mindset that. Okay, so then on to the second part of the question, like, does he have a policy mindset that is feasibly possible in our modern day government and society?
I think so. I don't think it'll happen. Like, it's not going to be obviously finished by the time he's done with the second term, assuming he gets two. Uh, but that's the thing with any libertarian president. If we got the first libertarian president since Washington, I'm just gonna say that he was libertarian. Uh, just because I believe it was for the most part, except for the taxes and whatnot. But uh, any kind of libertarian president that would be coming into office this day and age would just put us on a path towards that. Wouldn't be able to bring all of this about at once in 8 years. There's no way. There's no way that would happen. So then, of course, the problem becomes even after that. what happens if we get a Republican or a Democrat in right after and just undoes,
Right.
everything that was done, all the work that was done, then we're back to where we started.
Well,
So
does not the Libertarian Party have an address for that? I mean, is there not a way to stop that from happening?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know.
so
I'm
so
not sure there is anything they can do.
um,
I
so
know. I was thinking about the Whiskey Rebellion, Michael Vega. I
uh,
was. That's when he marched like 15,000 troops around and was like, "Bitch, you're gonna pay the whiskey tax." Like, yeah.
so one other one area as well that I think that libertarians kind of feel weak to me on is foreign policy. When we start to talk about things that are going on in other countries, et cetera, and I have to factor in this less than nationalist mindset that I get the feel for from the Libertarian Party whenever I talk about things. Um, is not foreign policy kind of weak when it comes? Isn't the Libertarian
So,
Party weak there?
the libertarian foreign policy can be summed up in 5 words: fuck off, leave us alone.
Okay, how does that
That's
factor in
it.
with their mindset on immigration then?
What do you mean? It's simple as if you can, if you have something to offer and you can pay your way over here, then you can come over here and you go through the proper processes. You can be a citizen.
Because I don't have a problem with the fuck off mentality, but when it comes, immigration is now intrinsically, intertwined with foreign policy now. How our stance on immigration affects trade policy with other countries. It affects diplomacy with other countries. So those two things have to carry. Wouldn't you agree? They have to carry the same
Well,
weight. They have to
so
carry the same.
what kind of diplomacy do we need if we're only trading with other countries? Like, what else to diplomacy do we need?
Um, I understand that. What you're saying. Well, we need diplomacy for traveling through, territorial waters, things like
Okay,
this,
yeah.
right? You've got to have,
Hmm.
trade requires that you have diplomatic relations with other countries on a level to where
Yeah.
you can fucking get to where you're going. I mean,
And
imagine
all
getting
and
into the Persian Gulf without the right
right.
relationships.
Well, especially with, trade, yeah, you're going to be going, through other people's waters or, international waters. The thing is, though, with things like, foreign policy and trade, those do fall under the purview of the federal government. That is part of their job,
Right.
according to the Constitution. So yes, they can do that, but when it comes to like things like wars and anything like that, no allies. I mean, maybe we'll sell weapons to you. I don't see a problem with that. But I mean, as for putting our people in harm's way over someone else's conflict, no. Fuck off, leave us alone.
Okay, so and then, but then it always comes down to okay. The next step is okay. We don't want to get involved in a country's conflicts, but what if those countries' conflicts are directly impacting our ability to trade? So, for instance, again, the Persian Gulf is an excellent example of where conflicts in that region can stop trade to that area, thus impacting us economically.
Can we find someone else to trade with?
I
I
mean,
mean, there's
that's
plenty of other countries to trade with. I mean, what are we getting out of the Persian Gulf?
Well, that's just
Just when you
one
use
exa-
these,
That's just one
right?
example. There's lots
I'm
of different
saying,
areas where we could run into that when we're
yeah, but
talking about
there's
trade.
always all the other areas. You know what I
Well,
mean?
sure,
Like,
but one country might need. We understand how trade works. There's demand here and here, but
mhm.
there's direct conflicts that are stopping trade there. There's hardly any demand in other areas. So yeah, then
It's more about what we're trying to import, I think, than
right,
what we're trying to export even.
right. But
And
this
yeah,
is
so if there's demand somewhere, that demand will be filled. That's how any market works. That's why a black market exists. It's because if there's a demand for it, someone will fill that demand,
Well,
even if it's illegal.
okay, so I understand about the black market. The point is
No, I'm saying
just
that's
the
how
initial.
that works in general.
If the initial trade is impacted, if
Mm-hmm.
these kind of conflicts impact trade, it happens. So okay, the mindset, okay, just trade with other countries, got it. But this is the kind of thing that prompts corporations to look to the government. So this is where we begin to, these gimmies, right? You need to get involved here. You need to do this. You need to insert some diplomacy and try and stop this conflict. Whether through diplomatic means or through military means, to where we can open up trade. Now, I'm not saying that's the right approach. I'm just saying this is what prompts these kind of conversations and prompts our government to act on these things as one of the imperatives that does it. As an example, you know, this, you these again, this is a safety net that even
Mm-hmm.
importers, exporters, that's one of those safety nets down the line that they don't realize is going to go away when you implement when you implement libertarianism or
Yeah.
that ideology. And again, makes it a harder sell. You know, it's like, okay, you're on your own. Um, how do you tell big corporation that they're on their own?
You
With,
say, "Hey, you're on your own."
but then also expect them to say, okay, well, we're on our own, then we can do what the fuck we want.
So long as they're not violating the law.
And that's where I have to ask, okay, so what laws? Where do we begin to
Well,
regulate as far as
there's
corporations are concerned?
yeah, international commerce laws, that sort of thing. If we're talking about international companies, the like I said, the federal government does have the ability to regulate
Sure.
international trade and even trade from state to state. So whatever they put in place there, it has to be followed. Otherwise, that company doesn't get to do business anymore. And again, it's holding them to the same standard as anyone else. And there's, not having them be above the law, which is unfortunately what they've become.
Would you say that a libertarian-run government would give a broader spectrum of corruptibility to corporations, etc., or would the gutting of the government solve that issue and be enough of a balancer to I don't know. I could just see things beginning to get a little wild west from the standpoint of, okay, well, we don't have safety nets and we're kind of on our own, so we can kind of make our own rules as long as we stay within
Hmm.
the letter
The
of the law.
Constitution.
There's is there not a wide spectrum there that companies could get
Yeah,
away with?
absolutely. Yeah, and when you bring up the Wild West thing, most of that has been romanticized.
Sure, sure.
In
I'm
that
just a term.
it's been hyperbolic. It's exaggerated quite a bit. It was much more peaceful than the movies would have you believe.
Sure,
Movies and books and television that would
sure.
have you believe. Yeah,
I mean, you could
people
insert
weren't just being slaughtered in the streets like you would think.
anarchist mindset in that if you want. I mean, it was just used for a colloquial term for the
Yeah.
the mindset I was pointing out. But go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have no problem with corporations doing what they want so long as they are held to account by the states that they're in, or if they're international, then by the federal government.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's a weird thing for me to think about that we could remove loopholes. Remove a lot of regulation that'll remove a lot of loopholes, etc. as well. But it seems to me that it does open the door for a broader spectrum of more um, self motivated actions by corporations that I don't know might not be savory even if they are legal. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing is it comes down to the consumer of those products. to first of all be informed as to what that company's doing, if it's unethical but technically illegal. And then it's their responsibility to not use those products and not give them that money. And then that company goes under because they don't have the corporate welfare they have now, where, if they start going under, well, the government's going to give us a bunch of money and we'll be all right. You know what I mean? So they're going to have to either change their attack really quick or fail. And they won't be too big to fail.
Um, when you talk about that, so we would ultimately, the Libertarian Party would ultimately should lead to a decentralization of the government.
Yes.
Is the ultimate goal. Am I correct?
Right.
Or
Yeah.
that's the current, the present day vernacular for what it would constitute.
Decentralization. Yeah, for
Right.
sure.
Um, so I guess overall, does it does it weaken us or strengthen us as a country when we look at from an internal standpoint and an external standpoint? Um, you know, as far as the global uh, face that we have out there. Um, how is our strength in a libertarian run government in the present day
Uh,
and age?
so first off, I want to thank Ron Helton for donating a lemon. He donated a lemon to us on D Live, so
Nice.
appreciate it.
Nice.
And but no, so to the question, I don't know. I see it going one of two ways. One, people are going to be more dependent on their community, and having to work together, with other people, especially people that they disagree with, and then finding common ground and building a strong community that helps each other, works together, and is unified in at least a few sets of beliefs. Or we're going to balkanize, which I don't want to see happen, but it could be a solution. I think that would be a very negative thing, but it would solve a lot of these, I disagree with you, so fuck you kind of problems that we have, at least in the current day.
And by balkanizing, we
I mean,
would.
like separating people based on beliefs. Obviously, balkanizing that was based on ethnicity, but I'm saying, based on your political beliefs. If you want
Right.
to, if California wants to be the socialist utopia that it knows it can be, then more power to them. Let them fuck themselves up, but don't affect us over here in Florida. We're gonna have our own, set of beliefs, and if you don't like that, you can move somewhere else that does have those beliefs. Basically just putting people's beliefs in one area, and but that when that would do the same kind of thing, would make a more vibrant community. Uh, the people being more unified and more importantly trusting of one another. So those are some of the pros to balkanizing, but a lot of the negatives I think will override the positives. Like, I mean, first of all, failed ideologies like socialism. California would go down immediately. We'd be down a state pretty much. As soon as the state burns down one more time, due to the wildfires they have out there, they're fucked, right? Um, it would obviously change things like the electoral college. Completely change the demographics for that. Who's what, where, population,
Right.
delegates, and all that kind of nonsense. Um, obviously, what can be done in so like all of Silicon Valley is in California. So most of our you know social media sites are over there. So that would become a problem. I mean, there would be a number with balkanizing, and
Right.
plus, that's not what America is about. America is not about keeping certain people in certain areas, even if it was at one point, due to skin color.
Right.
It's not that, and that's never what it was intended to be.
So, are states like Texas, California, and others, are they allowed to cede from the union in a libertarian run country?
I don't know what the party would think about that, but I would be personally okay with it because I am a huge believer in sovereignty. If you don't like the country you're a part of, as a as a state government, if you don't like the country that you're a part of, then you should be able to leave it.
Is that but is that constitutional? Is that
It's okay. So it was at first, and then the Supreme Court ruled against it after the Civil War.
okay? So
I
so
believe that's how it went. I could be mistaken, but I believe that's how it went.
so that being said, then it's your belief that the original founders left an open door for secession.
I'm sorry, what?
That
Repeat that?
you're under the impression that the founders left an open door
Yes.
for a state to walk away from the union.
Yes.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
That would, you know what? Do me, if you're gonna try, if you're gonna do any kind of work to try and convince me over this period of time, find that out. I would be curious to know that, because
Okay.
that does factor in. There's going to be states that don't want to be part of a libertarian-run world. You know,
Yeah.
when you
And like
talk about a
Van Houten's
socialist state,
saying right there, secession now, secession forever, free to join, free to leave. Period. I 100% agree with that. 100%. If you're free to join, a union, or you're free to leave it, whether it be the state union or
right?
like your state or the country as a whole.
And
Yeah.
and
I
if
mean, while I'm very glad that I was born in this country, I want to be free to leave it if I want to.
and and if you were to find that that's unconstitutional, would you change your opinion on that?
Um, Probably not. I probably wouldn't. Just because, I mean, first of all, the Constitution. First of all, it's not one of the 10, not one of the first 10 amendments. So it means it was added afterwards, which means it wasn't one of the Bill of Rights. Because the first 10 are the Bill of Rights. So hang on, let's look at that real quick, because that's gonna bother me now if I don't.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember because there's some part in the back of my mind is thinking that there's some talk about secession or being part of the union, but I don't. I could be purely wrong, and I would hate to try and speak to it, but I'm curious about that because present day and age, as it were, like I said, you've got states like California that are immediately not going to want to be part of something like that. And if they have an opportunity to do it, they would be one of the first ones to
Okay.
jump on board.
See, it's not in the first 10 for sure.
Right.
Um, which means that I would say that it was left open to people leaving, to our states, to leave the union.
Now,
So
Ron,
if it wasn't in the first 10, that means that it wasn't, the original intent, and it was added on later on, which I know it was added on later on because you're not allowed to now.
Ron,
But I believe that was after the Civil War.
now Ron Helton says the Constitution is crap. It has failed to keep the government in check, and it has failed to protect liberty. But that's not the
No, see,
Constitution's fault.
yeah, hang on, Ron, because that's not the Constitution's fault, right? It's our fault, not the Constitution's. We haven't held the government to account for not following the Constitution. The Constitution had nothing to do with it.
So that comes back to a question that I've put to you in lots of different ways, but it always you know is the original Constitution capable of handling our society in the present day?
I
Is
think
it
it would be if it was followed. Yeah, but that's the thing, is it's up to us to force the government to follow the Constitution. See you later, Michael Vega.
peace out, brother?
He's like,
Yeah, that's where it comes down to. It's like, okay, that's back to the very original question right there. Is
yeah.
is the Libertarian Party the right third party? Um, there are so many aspects of the Libertarian Party that
Yeah, I agree, Van Helsing.
seem
The
what
the tree of liberty. Yeah,
right.
yeah,
A lot of a lot of the ideology does seem somewhat antiquated compared to our present day society, making it feasible in present day society. Um, and then the very idea of the Constitution, is it viable to live a libertarian under libertarian rule and adhere to the Constitution in the present day and age? So that'll be the question that I want you to chew on, John. Is the Libertarian Party the right third party that we need, or do we need something new, like something maybe Wyatt cooks up for his government class, or I've even seen that Anna Voltis has an
yeah.
ideology that he thinks would be effective.
And I'm actually not against his ideology. It's basically it's a lot like libertarianism, but like with a little bit more force on enforcing. If I understand correct, I don't want to misrepresent what he believes. But I believe it's because I mean that's why I was saying it was while he was on he was explaining it I was like that sounds like libertarianism. Um, it was a lot of first of all decentralization, but like to the smallest level possible.
Right,
To like your town or your city,
right,
like that's what has the power, if any. If I remember correctly, that was a while ago when
right.
he was
And no,
explaining
no,
it. I haven't really followed up on him
no,
with
and
him.
that's not too far off. That's not far off the mark at all. It is that way. I do believe um, that there's a more authoritarian edge
Yeah,
to his ideology than the Libertarian Party has. Um,
yeah.
so and again, but does that make it any less viable? When it's all said and done, um, I have to lean towards the necessity of a more authoritarian government in
Ooh,
the present day and age to a certain
real
extent.
quick. Ed donated an ice cream and a lemon,
Nice. Wait. So is that a
and
lemon ice cream? If we mix
ooh,
them together, is that a
I
lemon?
don't know if that's a good idea. Ooh, that
I
sounds gross.
love lemon sherbet.
Yeah, but you don't eat the yellow snow, and I'm not gonna eat yellow ice cream either. So,
No. Okay. Well, you do you like banana ice cream? Duh.
I don't think I've ever had banana ice cream.
I have, and it's delicioso.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. But yeah, thank you, Ed. We appreciate it, man.
Very nice. Thank you,
That's awesome of you.
Ed. Yeah. So that'll be the thing, John. Is I don't know. Either you will or won't convince me that the Libertarian Party has something to offer, or you'll talk yourself into some new way of thinking. One of the two. Um, I don't
Well,
know.
feudalism isn't half bad. Uh, but I do have some reading material for you because I think some other people might be able to convince you better than I can.
I'll just put this out there. I don't make a lot of time to read anymore, like I
What
should.
about audiobooks? Would you be able to
I might
do
do that
that?
occasionally if you send me some
Because
information. Yeah.
yeah, because like the Revolution by Ron Paul is the first one I read that was libertarian, and that did a lot to kind of open the door, to like basically so you can see the perspective that libertarians are coming from. It basically lays out the principles and why those principles are important. So I think that'll be a really good one, and I know you can get the audiobook for free on YouTube.
You said that was
You can
Ron
just
Paul or Rand Paul?
Ron Paul,
Ron Paul, Daddy, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
Daddy Paul, yeah.
Now,
Yeah, and that was an excellent book.
now,
That one and the Kindly Inquisitor is another really good one.
now, isn't now Rand Paul is supposed to be libertarian, but he's in the government under the guise of a Republican so that he can get in there, right?
Right. Yeah, but he is. Yeah, he's basically a libertarian.
Or he's supposed
Obviously,
to be.
some people, he is. He's. I mean, first of all, he was one of the only ones who voted against both the Iraq and the Afghanistan war. He's voted against like every single war that we've been in since he's been in office. You know, just all these things. He's done a lot. You'd have to look into him.
Right.
It's not coming
I
off to
mean,
me at the
no,
top
no,
of my
no.
head.
No, and I understand that. I guess it's more to the point that it's like, okay, to get get involved in government, you got to go into the guise of one of the two parties to get your libertarian ideals in there. But I think that since Trump has been in office, he's been leaning less on that libertarian uh, post and leaning more towards that Republican post, hasn't he?
Right, wait. 'Cause Ron's saying Rand leans libertarian. I've not seen that. I think he leans more Republican. I think his dad is libertarian.
His dad was
You
always
got those
libertarian,
mixed up.
right?
Yeah, I think you got those mixed up, Ron. Because yeah, especially if you read the
Oh,
Revolution, Ron Paul.
maybe that's what he's saying. He leans libertarian, but he's more really
Sure.
Republican. Whereas
Right,
he's
but he's
not as
not his dad, who is
who
very
is very
libertarian.
libertarian, right?
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
My
what
bad.
I
Yeah,
believe. That's what he's trying to say there. Um,
I see that. Yeah, fair enough.
and that's that and again is like okay so um, if that's is libertarianism the Libertarian Party the right third party because he's an example of what you have to do to get any kind of libertarianism into politics is you have to kind of lean towards a party line. Now maybe he part of that is maybe he didn't agree with everything his libertarian father went with
Yeah,
and leaned more towards that Republican mindset. I don't know, but it's it seems like a sacrifice to have to make, and thus weakens my view of the party, as it
yeah.
were, when
Well,
you
the
have
party
divisiveness.
itself is very weak, unfortunately. And it's hard to convince people to be on that side when the party is weak like that. And it's very unfortunate. So the only thing I can do instead of saying the Libertarian Party is the one to go for, I would say the libertarian ideals and libertarian values are what's important, and not the party itself.
Okay, so then I will put now we come to the final real question for you, and it's the primary one I ask. At this time, based off everything you've said and the revelations that you've made about the Libertarian Party, both in their weaknesses and strengths, are they the right third party in the present day?
I think they are. Yeah, yeah. I think they are. Because even the parts that I disagree with, it would take an immense amount of time for them to come to fruition. It really would. So especially like the open borders thing, there's enough pushback on that, even from the left. Not everyone on the left is an open borders advocate.
Right.
So I think that there will be like a concerted effort against that. So that sort of thing isn't going to happen. I don't think, at least in 1 or 2 terms, of a person being president.
But you
But
feel
a lot
like
of the other things could easily happen, especially decentralizing the government.
right.
That could start to happen at least. Especially getting rid of those, alphabet agencies.
Right.
Those would be easily cut. Those could probably be cut by an executive order. I'm not 100% on that, but
Right.
they very well might be able to.
Uh, Ron says, "Listen up, cupcakes. All the parties are fucking weak. Don't base your
Hmm.
values of liberty on any party's values." And
Right. No,
and
he's right. Yeah,
and that makes
absolutely.
sense. But we understand that you're gonna have to bring people together under one roof, as it
Yeah.
were, if you're gonna move something forward cohesively, because anarchy won't work. It's that's not a solution. We just can't have nobody at the top. Nobody is some leader. Um, so it's okay. You know, you know they're weak, but you see the ideology as the best third party. Or again, it comes to the question: do we need to get rid of one of the two parties? Um,
Well,
and
I think we need to get rid of all the parties, honestly.
and then we just run on individual ideology.
Individuals. Right.
Is that now? So in that vein, is that the easier thing to do than to try
I
and
think so.
introduce a libertarian party?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we see look what happens with the DNC,
Sure,
right?
right. Good
I mean,
example.
it's
Yeah,
way too powerful.
right.
I mean, they get to put whoever they want up. Screw what the people want to say. Well, then what's the point of voting? You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, getting rid of parties. First of all, stop all that the money funneling back and forth to every like, hey, give us money and we'll put your candidate up, or we'll change the rules for you so you can go on the debate stage, or it'll stop those shitty debates where it's like, oh, we get to decide who's on the stage for the debate. No, that's bullshit. If someone's running for president, they need to, have their voice heard. Regardless if there's, I don't care if there's three people who will vote for them and those are all their family. I don't care. Like, if you're running for president, you need to have your voice heard.
Well, there you go, John. And
I
there's
don't care if there's 300 people on the stage. Hold multiple nights of debates.
the,
Hold a week, 2 weeks of debates. You know, let people decide for themselves who their nominee would be. Or I mean, people will drop out quick.
right.
Without getting no support. That'll happen easily. And there'll be a core of like 50 people who will have good amounts of support and let them duke it out.
So then there is your ultimate challenge. And I have to wonder if it's which is the larger challenge. But the ultimate challenge is, how do you get rid of the party system, right? How do you take that out, and who does it? Like, you can't expect a Republican or a Democrat to do it.
Yeah,
You don't
exactly.
necessarily know that a Libertarian would do it, but they
Probably not.
might, right?
Yeah.
So how do you get somebody in place that removes that?
Yeah.
And
Well, that's the unfortunate thing. I think it would have to be done through a constitutional amendment.
oof.
I think that's the only way you could do
Right,
it.
but still, which side puts that forward? How do you get
Right.
that motion,
And then how do you get
going?
bipartisan support for it?
Right. So
It's not going to happen. Yeah.
it almost seems to me that that is a bigger challenge than getting a libertarian into
Yeah.
the White House to start affecting these monstrous changes.
Yeah. I agree with that.
it's it's a it's a sad thing, but I think quite true.
Yeah.
But if you think of an effective way to get it done, who could do that? Let me know. But anyway, so I'm done talking about this. Thank you for some education. I will say at this point, you've not swayed me. You've only left me a little more
Yeah.
floundering because I don't know. I've got one vote right here, and I don't even know who to fucking give it to anymore.
The only thing I can do is, try and convince you of the values of libertarianism, about the ideology itself. I can't push you towards the party because I'm not going to push you towards something that I don't necessarily believe in,
well,
right? So,
that's fine.
and even if I do vote for them, I'm not going to agree with everything, and I'm going to tell the truth that yeah, they're a weak party. That there's too much disagreement among libertarians for them
Your
to be unified enough to get anywhere.
your best bet is to legitimize a candidate for me. If like Vermin Supreme, I want to learn more about him. I do. I
Yeah,
might even.
I'll have to send you some of his. He's him actually speaking on policy.
Right.
Obviously, you should also watch his his satire kind of deal as well, because that is good entertainment. His website has a lot of that. It's really really good stuff. You'll have a good time on was it verminsupreme2020.com.
Yeah.
You'll have a good time on that site, but most of it is like satire.
Right. Well, yeah. Send me some of that stuff. So outside of that, like, all I see right now is it's going to be a pretty dicey, messed up picture between now and November.
Yeah.
I think the writing's on the wall as far as how I don't know. Bernie's gonna have to pull his ass out of the fire. It's things are really neck and neck as he calls it right now. So he's not a lock for the candidacy anymore. Um, so when it's all
Yeah.
said and done, I don't know that either one of them going into office is a good thing, and I don't
Ooh.
know that Trump staying in office is a good thing. Um,
Ron Hilton donated another lemon too.
nice, gotta love those
Yeah,
lemons.
dude.
Makes me
Hell
want to
yeah.
pucker up. But anyway, so that being said, just keep an eye on it. Let's just keep an eye on things, how they're going. Nothing matters now till the full primaries are done and it's all sorted out to see if Bernie gets fucked or if Biden fucks us. Uh, but other than
He's just
that,
gonna sniff our hair. It's
right.
okay.
I do want to say thank you to everybody out in the chat tonight.
Yeah, definitely, guys.
Lots of good input. Some of it I even paid attention to and listened to. Appreciate the support. Make sure you're hitting that like button, that subscribe button, and that notification button if you haven't done those things already. John, these people may look for us outside of here.
Yes.
In case they don't know, where can they find us?
Yes, you can. On your way down to hitting that like button, the subscribe button, like Robert's already said. If you go even further down, you'll find our description, which has all of our links, such as our Twitter, which is at the GenGapP. You'll find our Discord link, which if you're not on our Discord server, I don't know what the hell's wrong with you. It's a great place, very wholesome place full of a lot of good boys who never do anything wrong ever.
Think Little House on the Prairie.
Yeah, exactly. And you can also find us on freedomscoop.com, where you can find all of our stuff and people like Jay Edgar and Stephen Ignoramus and Wyatt from Roundtable Decision, who has recently joined us. And I believe Our Rated Conservative is joining us there as well. So look forward to that. I'm not sure if he's there yet, but I think he agreed to be on there. So keep an eye out for that. And you can also buy our merch over there. We have t-shirts and a mug. So make sure you go and get some of those. And when you're checking out, you can put in the code GenGap and you'll get 15% off. So
15%.
that's pretty awesome. That's a good deal, I think.
You gotta love it.
In fact, you know what? I didn't get that deal when I bought my shirt. So.
Are you sure, John?
Shut up. Yes, yeah, no, I don't think I did actually. I don't think we had the
I don't think it
promo
was in
code
there.
in place
Yeah,
at that
I
time.
don't think it was there.
Yeah,
But on the flip side, ours were a little more personalized. But
right.
that's
Ours are more personalized for
because we were
sure.
a little
Yeah,
special. But
yeah.
I'll pay a little extra for a little special. I don't mind. All right, folks. Once again, thank you for coming out tonight, John. Thanks for educating us and talking and talking. Uh, it says the web lady is setting RRC up. I don't know what that means.
Excellent.
Is that a thing?
That means that he'll be up there soon
Oh.
on Freedom Scoop.
On
Yeah,
Freedom
yeah, yeah.
Scoop. Yes, yes. Good, good, good. So we will be back again. Looks like we'll be back again Monday night, and I believe we're going to shoot for 9:30 Eastern
Yes.
time on Monday night. Go ahead and back the show up by about a half an hour and see if we can adjust. Get a little bit, because other people have shows to do, and we don't like stepping on other people's toes, even though we were in that time slot first. Um,
Yeah.
did I say that in the nice, diplomatic, passive aggressive way I
Yes.
intended to?
Absolutely. It was
Uh,
spot on. Perfect.
okay, good. Another piece of good news. Hopefully, I don't know. Monday night, I may be running a new system. I did pick up a computer, so not
Yes.
that I could afford all. Thank you for your help. I have to. Let's see, Henry here, and he's also in Discord.
Chicken nugs on the
Chicken Nugs in
Discord.
Discord.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that help. It made a big difference, and hopefully I'll have that system up and running. I don't know. I'm going to start getting it set up if it comes Sunday, and maybe we'll be running on it on Monday, but I'm expecting next Friday, which we will be back again next Friday for our regular 8:30 show as
Yes.
well. And who knows if something crazy happens, but do yourself a favor, protect yourself, pay attention to what's going on with the coronavirus, disseminate the news, and make sure that you're listening to relevant information on it, and just take care of yourself. This is one of those things that you don't want to play around with, even if it's something that's not going to be anything in 6 months from now. But anyway, outside of that, have fun, folks, and we will talk to you later. Peace out, John.
See you guys.
The war